back to the Breaking the Plane podcast. We hope you enjoyed last week's episode. We are getting back going today. Dustin's here with me, and we will be going from quarterbacks number 18 through 33 on this list. So when we wrapped up last time, we ranked the top 17 quarterbacks in draft-style format. Dustin's going to kick us off going to 18 shortly, but before we do, make sure you leave a comment on this video, because we will be selecting one person that comments on this video at random for a free blaster. We will random this off on our live stream on Monday night. You can get a 2021 Prism Draft Picks football, 2021 Chronicles basketball, Wildcard Illumination 2021, or we got the Space Jam blaster there too. So you can get your choice of any of those four if you win the random, so make sure to comment below the video. Now, Dustin, take it away. Who you got coming in at number 18?
Yeah, so I talked about it a little bit, so it's kind of spoiled already at the end of the last podcast, but I'm taking Kirk Cousins right here. And I think that he is kind of your prototypical, slightly above average quarterback. You put him in, he'll win you a couple of games, he'll lose in big spots, but your team will always be able to compete with him. So he gets streaky too. Like, he can have really good streaks where he's putting up some good numbers, and then he gets cold. So I kind of see him as like, he is a quarterback that will get you wins, but he's never going to be the reason your team takes it to the next level. So kind of with him on the Falcons this year, he's got a good supporting cast around him, just kind of like he did in Minnesota as well. I mean, you don't quite have as good of receivers there, but I think there's a lot of talent there. And so I think he'll do well. And I mean, in a weak NFC South, that's kind of all you need. I mean, honestly, for me with the Panthers that last year, I was like, okay, well, the NFC South was so bad the prior year. I honestly thought, oh, I mean, if we just stabilize the quarterback position, we can actually do well. Now that led us to being the worst team in the league, but that's beside the point.
With Kirk Cousins, have you seen growth in him the last few years? Because he did get that wild card win over the Saints, right?
Wild card win. And I think there was like a primetime victory or two thrown in there.
The big win against the Bills.
Yeah.
That one. I mean, he's had some signature victories over the last few years, so I have a more positive impression of Kirk Cousins than I generally would. I was saying before, usually he was right around my 15, 16. I have him a little bit lower just because I'm concerned about this injury. This is a tough one to come back from.
And he's older too.
Yes.
Kind of like Aaron Rodgers. Like I was.
Has Kirk Cousins ever won an MVP?
No, he hasn't. Okay. Aaron Rodgers is in my top 10. I'm not as big on him as you are.
So I have him at 9. So I have him at 10. So you have him at 10, and you're overrating him at 9.
No. If you were doing your own rankings, he'd be a lot higher.
Yeah, he would. I would have had him higher than 9 if I was ranking from the top. So.
Okay, so that's me.
All right, so we got him off the board. Well, I teased my pick for 19 last week. This one's going to be controversial. I'm going Russell Wilson at number 19, Pittsburgh Steelers. He's going into a very stable organization here, and I think that's exactly what Russ needs to do. He kind of was in an impossible situation with Sean Payton coming in last year. I never got the impression that Sean Payton wanted Russell Wilson to be his quarterback.
No, not at all.
He's not a Sean Payton type of quarterback. Sean Payton needs someone like, well, obviously like Drew Brees, but someone who can be a tactician and execute. A quarterback similar to like a quarterback like Brock Purdy's doing, he could make work really well.
Sure,
I think.
I agree.
So Russell coming in to play for the Steelers, he's got a great defense behind him, and he's not going to be asked to do too much. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's going to be good. He might just be average, but average is enough for the Steelers to make a significant playoff run. This could be a surprising year for them. If TJ Watt's healthy, Russell Wilson's on the field, he's going to accelerate what that offense can do. I like Pat Freiermuth as the tight end.
Yeah.
Very talented player. Had some injury issues last year. That's going to be a good target for Russ to work with. He rarely had great tight ends when he was in Seattle. He got a washed up Jimmy Graham at one point, but he would do great work, with like crazy players like Will Dissly. He doesn't need crazy targets to throw to. He can make people work, and people have a short sample size on Russ in Denver. You're forgetting about how good he was in Seattle. He was phenomenal, and while he won't be Seattle Russ in 2015 form or whatever, he'll be closer to that than he was in Denver.
So you mentioned that you didn't think that Russell Wilson was a fit for Sean Payton's type of quarterback. do you think he's a fit for Mike Tomlin's type of quarterback?
Yeah,
because his game is very much improvisational. So
yeah, I think that's sort of what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to need to pick up a few extra first downs.
Okay.
You know, it could be a run-based offense, but he still has his legs, and he's going to need to use them to be successful. But Russ can get you out of some of those third down and medium situations.
Sure, but if you look at the past, like kind of like the whole Mike Tomlin era, you have very pocket-centric passers that have been there. You have Ben Roethlisberger, and you have Kenny Pickett.
You also had crazy gadget plays. You had Le'Veon Bell throwing passes. You had
That's a fair
huge,
point.
deep bombs to Antonio Brown. Like, the offense was pretty electrifying. When it was Big Ben, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell, those three, that trio, have we ever seen for that year that they were incredible together, any trio be that good?
Yeah.
It's really hard to say that we have. So I feel strong about Russell Wilson at 19. I even think Russ could go a little bit higher potentially than that. So where are you doing at number 20?
So I'm going with Baker Mayfield.
Oh, Baker.
Yeah. No,
You should have some keen insight. He played quarterback for your team
yeah,
for a hot
yeah.
minute
He was
there.
he was terrible. And I thought that, this is an indication that Baker Mayfield is terrible.
Yeah.
Because I was actually intrigued when we first got him, and especially after that first game with the Browns. Sure, he started out bad in that game, but then he almost led that comeback, and I was like, okay, like we've got something here. And then it went off the rails. I'm starting to see that that's more of a Panthers organizational and coaching staff issue, because he went over to the Rams and he immediately wins them a game with, like, what was it, 3 days?
Yeah, and with 2 touchdown drives to cap that off.
Right.
I remember it was Thursday Night Football, and I saw what the score was, and I just said, I'm not even going to bother putting the game on. They're down 2 scores. There's like 6 minutes left, and I said, it'd be cool to see what Baker looks like in a Rams jersey.
Right.
Fine, I'll watch a drive. They've got the ball, I'll watch a drive. So I put it on, they go down and score. I'm like, okay, I guess I got to keep it on, see what happens. And then that was a great game to tune in.
Right,
So,
yeah.
he's always had moxie.
But then he goes to the Bucks, and he has a great season, and he earns himself a big quarterback contract. So
Yeah.
I think he definitely resurrected his career, and it's so hard for a quarterback to do that after they've been in a bad situation and kind of have a bad perception. Because even the last couple of years in Cleveland, like the last year he was in Cleveland, he didn't have the greatest perception that he was like a good quarterback. So, and yeah, he got traded away for a 5th round draft pick. So for him to like completely 180 that around, like I think speaks to he's got a lot of skill and a lot of determination to prove himself.
Do you think it's possible that David Tepper might have made a hasty decision moving off Baker Mayfield?
No. I think he just might not have
Because
been a good
Tepper's
fit.
kind of prone to hasty decisions.
I mean, yes. I'm not denying that could have been in the realm of what caused that.
Yeah.
I think the bigger thing is that Matt Rule didn't know how to run a team.
Okay.
So
you were with Tepper with the firing of Matt Rule. Yeah. We're getting a little off topic here, but
I would probably agree with that.
Okay, cool. So moving on to me at 21, it would be a great transition to go from Baker Mayfield resurrecting his career to Geno Smith, but I can't. It's not time for Geno yet. So it has to be ranked somewhere. We're going to go to Deshaun Watson at number 21 for the Browns. Had a winning record as a starter last year and is going to be better than any of these other options at the table playing the quarterback position. Not my favorite player in the league, so not going to spend much time on Deshaun. Are you ready to go at 22?
I am, yeah. So I think I'm kind of torn between 2 choices here. I think I'm going to go with Derek Carr here. Derek Carr, for me, is a frustrating quarterback.
Yeah.
Especially after his second year, you thought, he's putting everything together. He's going to be a good quarterback. And I think he puts up the numbers sometimes, but he just doesn't quite get his team to where it needs to be. And I thought the change of scenery for the Saints was going to be a big one. And I think that's what the Saints thought, too. That it's like, we'll just get a good quarterback, a good above-average quarterback, and we'll be good. And it didn't work. He wasn't very good with the Saints last year. So
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned with how that's playing out, and I can't rank him higher because of that. I want to rank him higher. I think he has the talent to be ranked higher.
Yeah,
I think I've got him at the right spot because something's just not right.
Yeah. I was very high on Derek Carr heading into the 2022 season with Devontae Adams coming in and all of that, the college teammate connection. I'm always big on that stuff. I had the Raiders winning the division that season and the Josh McDaniels hire clicking, so I missed big time on that. So I've got Derek Carr a lot lower on my list. But I always wonder, that year that the Raiders had that incredible season under Jack Del Rio, and he broke his leg at the end of the season.
Yeah.
What would have happened if he could play out the whole thing?
Right. Well, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think his backup was Matt McGloin, and he got injured too. And so they had Connor Cook in that.
Cook from Michigan
in that
State.
playoff game,
yeah.
and it just. The Texans weren't even that good in that game, but the Raiders just couldn't do anything. So it reminded me the collapse of the Raiders in that season reminded me a lot of what happened to the Cardinals when they started out really good with Carson Palmer back in 2014. Carson Palmer injured his ACL again.
Mm-hmm.
Drew Stenson, I think, was his name. I could be wrong on that.
Yeah.
Got them to like a 4-1 record with the starts, and then he went down, and it was Ryan Lindsay.
Ryan Lindsay, I remember him. Yeah.
And
he is not on our quarterback ranking.
No.
All right, well, earlier we were talking about quarterbacks resurrecting their careers, and it's time for Geno Smith, who is the prime example of that. From the 2013 draft, was considered the top quarterback prospect in that draft in an extremely weak draft class, falls to the second round, and ends up getting scooped up by the Jets in the second round. Side note, E.J. Manuel was the only quarterback taken in the first by the Buffalo Bills. But Geno stuck around as a backup for many, many years, going to different teams. It didn't work out in New York, but does it for any quarterback? No, not really.
Eli Manning, maybe.
Oh, wow. Wow, good answer. But then seeing him connect with Pete Carroll and backing up Russ out there, and I'll never forget heading into that first season with Russ in Denver, the 2022 season, and everyone's saying, who are the Seahawks going to sign? Who are they going to bring in? Who's it going to be? And Pete Carroll just keeps saying, we've got Geno. And everyone's like, okay, sure, yeah, you're going to just say your top guy is your top guy. Well, he comes out in week 1 and beats Russell Wilson and has stayed on a solid trajectory ever since. So while I personally would rather have Russell Wilson as my quarterback, Geno Smith has shown true leadership qualities. He's a humble guy, and he's really just advanced himself. You don't see that. You don't see it.
Yeah.
Rich Gannon maybe is the only answer I can think of. Someone who was a backup for so long and then regains a starting role. Jeff George,
you could
maybe.
Maybe say Brad Johnson.
Brad Johnson, okay, and then he won a Super Bowl. Yeah, so that would be yeah. But that's pretty much it. So
yeah.
Who you got next?
So for my pick, you didn't pick Purdy. I'm picking Purdy here.
Okay, someone asked you sometime,
yeah,
right?
And I mean, I think you have to look at him as he is definitely a product of the system that he's in.
Yes.
He's got a ton of talent around him. He's a late draft pick, doesn't have a ton of arm talent, but I think this is kind of going along with, I think you might have mentioned it, that he could work in like a Sean Payton system or something like that. Mm-hmm. He knows how to run an offense, and he's running the 49ers offense incredibly well.
Yeah.
And he's putting up numbers because of it. Now, I think if you put Brock Purdy somewhere else on like a really struggling franchise, like Panthers or something like that, he's not going to do well. But you've got all that talent around him and a very good system that's very good at getting you to a championship game or a Super Bowl, but never can quite win it with Kyle Shanahan's system. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Brock Purdy. He's probably below average talent, but he's able to execute the system.
He's in the perfect fit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only system he's really going to succeed in, I think.
Right.
So when everyone midway last year is talking Brock Purdy MVP, I'm just like, come on.
But really, to Brock Purdy's credit, he's a humble guy, and when that stuff was being said, he's like, No, McCaffrey's the MVP.
Yeah. Let's go on to my next one. We got Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones coming up. And
so overhyped, like
yeah,
David Gettleman picking him with the 6th overall pick, like
was wonderful.
And he showed a couple, for you because you were able to land Josh Allen because of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he kept showing like little flashes and whatnot, but just never really lived up to any sort of potential. So
yeah, and a little better than a game manager, though. I've seen him do some things that are...
He has a bit of a dynamic side to him.
He can run super fast down the field and fall down at the 1 yard line.
Get caught by the turf monster.
Yeah. But, Daniel Jones, jokes and memes aside, he's turned into a very solid quarterback at this point, I feel. I would feel comfortable with Daniel Jones as a middle-of-the-road quarterback. He's someone that should probably be a starter, probably in that Baker Mayfield-ish tier for me. You're a little higher on Baker than I am.
I'm a little higher on Baker, kind of because he has put up good numbers and he's turned his career around.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones, before his ACL tear last year, was really bad. I don't know if you watched many Giants games, but I was watching them, and especially that pick 6 to Devin Witherspoon against the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Terrible. That was a terrible interception. And Brian Dable, you could just see that they're not syncing. And I know
they were the first year.
I know
what?
the previous
So what happened?
year.
That's
trying to implement new things, maybe teams tougher schedule. Teams started figuring out what Dable was getting out of Daniel Jones and forced him into other things. So, but yeah, it was literally like you saw after that pick on the sidelines, Dable is like, "What did you see?"
I remember that.
Yeah.
I think I was watching Red Zone and they shot over to the game and they just showed him on the sidelines.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's just some boneheaded mistakes that he's making. So I think I would almost argue that he's getting to the point where he's a backup. He's not a starting quarterback.
I disagree. I think he's crossed that threshold and has solidified himself as a lower end starter.
Well, if you're talking about salary, I mean, sure.
Who you got next?
All right, so my next pick is Jaden Daniels, new quarterbacks coming in. I mean, you picked Caleb Williams earlier. That's a little iffy,
I feel great about Caleb. I really do.
But this is the second of the rookie quarterbacks. And we don't have all the rookie quarterbacks in these rankings because some of them might not start. But Jaden Daniels will. And I think that he's going to be very interesting because of the dynamic playmaking that he brings to the table. Mm-hmm. Seems to have a really good long ball. The problem that I see with Jaden Daniels, he is a toothpick.
Yeah.
Like, he's tall, he's 6'4", but if he doesn't protect himself in the league, I think he might go the way of RG3 and just get injured.
That would be horrible for that franchise.
Right, it would be. But, like, if they can't protect him and he's not protecting himself, I just think, like, you see Anthony Richardson, that's a big dude.
Right.
And he's getting obliterated. So Jaden Daniels being this small, if he doesn't, like, do Kyler Murray slides and stuff like that, I just don't see him.
The baseball slide that we talked about last time. Yeah. Russell Wilson too, right? Those are guys that are mobile and have learned how to, make it so they don't take those big hits.
Right.
That would just be the worst thing for that franchise.
Right.
Like, another number
I just
two
think that
hit
is going to be a big part of his game, and if he can't fully realize that part of his game because he's hurt, I am not fully convinced as his skills as passer. And, I mean, you look at him on LSU, he had a bunch of receiver talent around him, like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. So
that was what made me pump the brakes on Burrow when he was coming out.
Yeah, no, totally. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, okay, you're throwing to the cream of the crop. You're throwing to the two best receivers in the NFL.
Right.
Okay.
Which it's a valid point. Yeah, I think it's a valid point. But Burrow,
I have it too. I ranked him 3 here, but I have him at 2. I think he's the second best quarterback. So,
and who knows? Maybe Jaden Daniels will prove us wrong.
I love. I mean, this is a franchise that needs to see a lift. They need a lift more than like any of them. Maybe Panthers are getting there.
Yeah, getting there.
Yeah, they need a break, and that would be nice to see Jaden Daniels pan out over there.
Yeah. So
this is kind of the point though where we start getting into backups who might be in a starting role that might not hold it the whole year, etc. And when we get into that territory, when I think of feisty backup quarterbacks who sometimes are starters who can win you games if they're required to start.
The modern day Ryan Fitzpatrick.
He is the modern day Ryan Fitzpatrick. Gardner Minshew.
Yep.
Minshew mania coming in for the Raiders. This just might work. It's weird
It might,
enough to
yeah.
maybe work.
Well, has Gardner...
Antonio Pierce is a Gardner Minshew type coach.
Yeah.
You know?
Has Gardner Minshew ever had elite receiving talent?
DJ Chark.
Yeah, no.
And Michael Pittman Jr.
Hey, he's good,
yeah.
but you have Devontae Adams, who is definitely a top 10 wide receiver in the league, and you could argue top 5. I think he's kind of fallen a little bit there.
Yeah.
But I still say you put Devontae Adams in top 10 receivers in the league.
Yeah, but the defense has some pieces. Max Crosby is a beast.
Yeah.
I like what they can do there. So if that defense can be solid, take a little pressure off. You've got the weapons. You drafted another tight end. Like, what is up with drafting these tight ends?
I think Bowers was highly thought of, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he really fits what the Raiders are trying to do.
I mean, it could be, if McDaniels would still be the coach, I thought they would be going for like the old Gronk Hernandez 2 tight end.
Yeah,
deal,
maybe.
But he's not.
No.
So I'm very curious to see how that turns out. But
And
like DJ Chark before, he had his best season by far as a pro the year Minshew started. Nick Foles,
it's true,
Nick
yeah.
Foles got hurt the first game Minshew played the whole season, and Chark got over 1,000 yards and hasn't done that since. He got a Pro Bowl. He made the Pro Bowl that year.
Yeah, so it's funny you bring that up though, because the Panthers-Jaguars game we went to, that was like one of Chark's biggest games. We refer to it as the McCaffrey game because McCaffrey went crazy in that one, but
yes.
Can't forget that DJ Chark went crazy in that game too.
He did, yeah. And if you recall the photo, the iconic picture of McCaffrey spinning into the end zone, we were there. It was that game, so it was a very high scoring game. McCaffrey played great. Chark had a nice game, and Minshew had him alive until the last ball. It was a way too short Hail Mary that Luke Kuechly just swatted down like a fly.
Yep.
But he can, like, he was on the verge of the playoffs last year.
Yeah, no,
and that Colts is a rebuilding roster.
Needed to get that ball a little bit further out to that running back. I can't remember his name.
I think I'm flirting with putting the Raiders in my AFC playoff picture.
Yeah, I can see them pushing for the 7 seed, maybe.
Everyone's going to be pushing for that 7 seed. It's going to be fun. It makes so much more dynamic because so many more teams are in it in that last week now.
Right, yeah.
So, all right, well, hand it off to you. We're kind of getting into the scraps here.
Right, but we're going to another former Panthers player in Sam Darnold with the Minnesota Vikings.
This high?
Yeah.
Sam Darnold?
I mean, with what we have left, sure.
Oh, no. You're saying you'd rather have Sam Darnold quarterbacking your team than Bryce Young. That's what you're saying by picking Sam Darnold.
Well, okay, that's
for this season at least. We're doing this as like who you want for this season.
At this point in time, I would say Sam Darnold's probably more experienced and probably more talented than Young.
I thought when he came in last year in the backup role, he did well.
Well, I mean,
in the prime time
but
game.
you're talking about the 49ers system where, like, now that's kind of why I think Darnold might succeed here, because he's got so much talent around him. Hawkinson, Jefferson, Jordan Addison.
Addison had a nice rookie campaign.
No, Addison's really good. I'm really high on Addison. And there were flashes, even on the Carolina Panthers, that I saw of Darnold, where he would make an incredible pass.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's why he was highly sought after. But then he just makes these boneheaded decisions, and some just terrible passes. So I think you're going to get a bit of that. He is a placeholder for J.J. McCarthy coming in. Like, everyone knows it. He might be able to work with the talent around them, get him a couple of wins, but he also might throw a couple of games for him because of those bad decisions he makes.
I'm very curious to see how he does, having had that experience with Kyle Shanahan last year. He purposely took less money to go be a backup there because he wanted that experience.
Right.
So what do you take from that? And we saw someone like Geno Smith do the backup thing for a while and then become a legit starter. We saw Baker Mayfield, right? He had a good season as a starter and then got the big contract.
You also saw Mitchell Trubisky do that, and it did nothing.
Oh. All right. Well, let's move on here. I'm going to get into the New England Patriots and Jacoby Brissett. Brissett set to start, coming back to the team he started with, and took over for 2 of those Deflategate games and was able to win them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Jacoby comes back, getting Drake May ready to take over the reins. And last year, I noticed Jacoby Brissett, well, because 2 years ago this was actually, I was at the Browns and Bucks game in the regular season, and the Bucks were, winning that game most of the time by a few points. They seemed very in control of the game, even though they weren't playing well. And then just in the fourth quarter, Brissett blew up. He was doing awesome, and he started hitting his receivers, just moving them downfield. It was chunk plays, and then the touchdown to Njoku was just crazy at the end. The whole stadium just lit up, and Tom Brady was so mad on the bench. I was 12 rows back from him. He was like slamming his helmet. He was just like, he was frustrated with Mike Evans. It was a tough day. Anyway, a lot of that being beside the point, just that Brissett against Tom Brady can rally his team and come back and win. Former teammate, by the way, when Deflategate happens. So.
Yeah, and I think Brissett is really that definition of a quarterback who can come in,
bridge.
Yeah, well, even like sub for a starter.
Yeah.
And continue what the team was doing. Win you a couple of games.
I like it, yeah.
But you would never want him to be your permanent starter. I kind of view him as like Teddy Bridgewater on the Saints.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison. Yep.
Teddy Bridgewater gets overpaid by the Panthers and does not great.
I think Teddy retired, didn't he?
He did before he actually played for the Lions.
Seeing him wear number 50 was just ridiculous.
Game,
Teddy Bridgewater. I always liked Teddy. I thought he was a very smart quarterback. Just the injuries never worked out. Like when he was in college, it was looking like he was going to be the number 1 overall pick. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, after Jacoby Brissett, we've only got 4 picks left to make. Where are you going?
All right, so here's where my guy Bryce Young falls.
Oh, boy.
Last year was rough, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Like, I am an avid Panthers fan, and those games were unbearably bad to watch. And
there were some Sundays you didn't even watch the whole game, I think, right?
I watched, like, the first couple of drives, and then I would put Red Zone on because I was just like, I can't. This is so tedious, so boring, and we're getting annihilated, or our defense is kind of keeping us in the game, but the offense doesn't ever pick up a first down.
So what are you seeing from Bryce?
So I'm going to caveat a little bit of last year, and I think most everyone would agree with this, is that he was given a horrible offensive line and absolutely no talent. I mean, his number 1 wide receiver was aging Adam Thielen, who was like a number 2 at best with Minnesota. Like,
Thielen put up some numbers for a couple weeks there.
He did, yeah. He was getting a lot of the PPR stats there. But yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously Bryce Young drafted 1st overall, and in the conversation by a lot of teams, because I was hearing like the Texans wanted to draft Bryce Young, but the Panthers did it. So I think the Texans would have been plenty happy if the Panthers had gone CJ Stroud and they got Bryce Young.
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of teams held him in high regard. He's got talent. He sees the field when he can see over the offensive line. But, like, he needs some time in the pocket. You saw, like, I think his time to throw was one of the worst in the league. His receiver separation rate was one of the worst in the league. How is a rookie quarterback coming into the league going to work with that?
Yeah.
So we've made a couple of adjustments. We overpaid some offensive linemen to come in. Maybe that'll stabilize the offensive line. We drafted a receiver. We traded for Deontay Johnson. So,
yeah, that's a decent ad.
It's a decent ad. It's nothing like mind-blowing or anything, but it's at least trying to address the problem. What I think is going to be really interesting, because there were a lot of, like, I knew going into last season it was probably going to be a really rough season, because there were a lot of reports coming out in camp that Bryce Young wasn't understanding Frank Reich's offense. And they were trying to
that's right.
They were trying to dummy things down for him and simplify things, and then they switched to their offensive coordinator calling plays, and there's just all sorts of instability. And you know that's because David Tepper's like, I want to win, I should be winning, and they were just doing all these crazy things to try to shake things up.
It's almost like he had an Urban Meyer year.
It really was.
Yeah.
Now,
not to that extent, maybe, but
not quite to that extent. But with Dave Canales coming in, I wonder if he's going to implement an offense that Bryce Young can run.
What do you know about the coach so far? What are you hearing?
Well, so everyone likes his style, the presence he brings to the team, and it's funny enough, 2 of the quarterbacks that we were talking about that turned their careers around. Yeah. I don't know if you were aware of this, but both Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, I believe for the Seahawks he was the quarterback's coach, and for the Bucs he was the offensive coordinator.
Oh, I like that a lot. So I didn't know that. Wow, that's awesome.
There is precedent for that. So I am curious to see what'll happen. I'm I'm not getting my hopes up.
Yeah.
I'm fully expecting them to come out week 1 and get like 5 first downs in the game. But like,
Oh, that's so painful.
I'm expecting a bad season. Okay.
Yeah, watching football with Dustin last year was like, if a first down happened, it was exciting. It was really exciting. It was like a touchdown. A first down was a touchdown. Yeah.
Yeah. And you look at our wins. Our wins against the Texans, we won like 12-11 or something like that. And then against the Falcons in the pouring rain, which I think there were like 10,000 fans at that game. It was a home game. 10,000 fans. It was really
record
bad.
low.
Yeah. We won 9-7. And the funny, the really ridiculous part of this is, I think I have to like triple check it, but we won those 2 games on a field goal with time expiring, which means we did not have a lead at any point the entire year last year.
Oh, man. You only had leads with the clock expired.
Right. I have to triple check that because we might have gotten a field goal against the Falcons in the first game on our first drive.
That is horrible.
Yeah, it's really bad.
That's like worse than the Lions.
Yeah. But we somehow won 2 games. So
my goodness.
All right. So let's
one
finish
more
this
one.
thing off.
Since it's your team, one last question: What does a successful season look for for Bryce Young? Like, if you were to paint something that could reasonably happen, what is success?
7-10. I think that would be
with him doing what?
With him working well in Canales' system, putting up maybe like a 3,500-yard passing season or something like that.
Yeah.
I would be anything above like 3,000 passing yards. I think I'd be happy with. If I see that
the bar is set low here. This is a low bar.
Yeah. If I see that the offense is progressing, and we got rid of defensive pieces, so it's possible the defense could lose us games this year. If I see that we're not losing games because our offense can't do anything, I think I'll be happy with that, because we are moving more towards an offensive-driven league. Defense is becoming less relevant. So if we're able to go the route where our offense is becoming more dynamic, I would be happy with that.
Well, if I was the football fairy and your only request was to have a slightly better team next year, I would grant you that wish.
Okay.
That's not a big ask.
Yeah. Better than 2-15.
Right?
Please.
Oh, my gosh. We're going to round this out. I got 2 picks left. This is my last pick for starters, and my choices are Will Levis or Zach Wilson.
Great picks.
And when in doubt, do not pick the Titans. We're going Zach Wilson. I do actually like Zach Wilson more than Will Levis, though. There's talent there. You've seen it. It's a question of, can anyone harness that talent? Sean Payton's great with quarterbacks. We know Zach Wilson's talented. He's got a heck of an arm. If he can get into his head and get him focused on what he needs to do, there's a chance it could work. I mean, my choices are him or Will Levis.
I mean, I will admit the training camp reports are surprising.
Yeah,
that are coming out.
I think Sean Payton is probably the best spot outside of like maybe Kyle Shanahan he could have landed in. So this could be a season for him, much like Darnold had on the Niners.
Yeah.
If this is a great landing spot if he's going to try to start on the path to reclaiming starter status. I know he's starting now, but like that's not the plan. They want to get Bo Nix.
They want to get
there.
Bo Nix involved.
But think of it this way: he learned from Aaron Rodgers last year, and now he can learn from Sean Payton this year. And if he can show some flashes, then you start getting into a spot where someone takes a shot on you the next season.
Yeah, kind of a Baker Mayfield situation.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So, all right, take us home. What do you got to say about Will Levis?
I mean, Will Levis. He's interesting. He's got a rocket arm, but I don't think he has much more than that. Now they did bring in Calvin Ridley, and he seemed to have chemistry with DeAndre Hopkins. Mm-hmm. So, and he started out strong in that game against the Falcons, but after that, you just didn't really see too much.
Yeah, there was tape on him.
There was tape on him. Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, maybe you could surprise the league for like 4 games, but you saw it with a couple of the backups last year where it's like, once they got to that 4-game mark, like a Jake Browning or something like that,
oh yeah,
they just couldn't do it anymore. Josh Dobbs, they couldn't do it anymore. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to tailor the offense and play to Will Levis's strengths and see if he can progress.
Yeah.
But I'm not really confident about it. I mean, if they get a deep vertical passing game going, maybe, but I mean, Tony Pollard's your running back, so I don't think you're really going to be able to establish the run enough in order to be able to set up easy passing situations for him. So my hopes aren't high for Will Levis.
Yeah, but well, I mean, we saw the flashes, right? So
Yeah.
you get a chance to see Kenny pop again this year, or not so much?
Yeah, and I'm glad that the reports that the Panthers were going to pick him number 1 overall weren't true. I would take Bryce Young over Will Levis.
So this one, and it's about where they landed. I've got the best backup quarterback. I think we're going to come out of this season and say this is the best backup quarterback in the league. Bo Nix. I'm going Bo Nix because Sean Payton has made his move.
Yeah.
He moved Russell Wilson out. This is his guy. And Sean Payton's a great football coach. So even if I didn't love Bo Nix as much as a prospect, the fact that he's under Sean Payton now, and that is his project. That is this. I mean, if Bo Nix doesn't turn out well at a certain point, you start looking at Sean Payton.
Right.
I
think
you couldn't win
do
with Russ.
look at Sean Payton.
You ran Russ out of town. You drafted your guy, and he's not performing.
Yeah.
That starts to turn into a bad resume. And I don't think he's gonna let that happen. Yeah. He's gonna get in there. He's gonna make him a very good backup quarterback this year because I think Zach Wilson will start most of the season. We'll see Bo Nix come in and do like a little win 2 games thing,
like a Mahomes thing at the end with Andy Reid.
Well,
I'm not going to compare Bo Nix to Patrick Mahomes.
I know, yeah, and I know that's not what you're doing. I think they're going to be having to fight for any chance in the playoffs. So they won't. So if Zach Wilson's a starter, he'll be playing at the end of the year.
Right.
I'm saying we might have a little snip where Wilson's hurt and out for a game or two, and he comes in and wins it, or plays like the Chiefs close or something, and you're like, whoa, what's that?
Yeah.
Think of like, remember that Thursday night game, Color Rush, when the Raiders were wearing their all silver and the Raiders beat the Chiefs, some crazy game like that? I could see Bo Nix doing
and I mean, it's funny you bring that up, though, because Zach Wilson almost beat the Chiefs last year and should have, if not for that holding call on Sauce Gardner, so...
Yeah, so they play the Chiefs that close, and they beat Josh Allen and the Bills in week 1. Full-strength Bills.
Yeah, Zach Wilson's a bit of an enigma. Like, it's kind of hard to define what
and that's why I'll pick him over Will Levis. He's got more upside.
That's fine. I'm totally in agreement with that.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap on our quarterback draft rankings for the podcast this week. Thanks for joining us. Remember, what should they do, Dustin?
They should comment down below.
Comment down below because you'll be entered into a drawing for a free blaster. And guess what? If we get more comments and more interest in the podcast, the prizes will get better for the giveaways. So we could upgrade the giveaway prizes if we see a lot of comments on this week's show. Thanks for checking it out. Comments are below. Let us know what you think. And remember, if you haven't done so already, hit that thumbs up, give us a like, and click subscribe. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the second episode of Breaking the Plane podcast, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.